ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation, Gaudi Gwareri Mahalla Pehla, Haumai Karatia Neh Sukh Hoi, Manmat Jhoothi Sacha Soi, Sagal Bigute Pave Doe, ਸੋ ਕਮਾਵੈ ਤੁਰ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੋਏ. ਐਸਾ ਜਗ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜੁਆਰੀ, ਸਭੇ ਸੁਖ ਮੰਗੈ ਨਾਮ ਵਿਸਾਰੀ ਰਹਾਓ. ਅਦਿਸ਼ਟ ਦਿਸੈ ਤਾਂ ਕਹਿਆ ਜਾਏ, ਬਿਨ ਦੇਖੇ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਬਿਰਥਾ ਜਾਏ. ਗੁਰਮੁਖ ਦੀਸੈ ਸਹਿਜ ਸੁਭਾਏ, ਸੇਵਾ ਸੁਰਤ ਏਕ ਲਿਵਲਾਏ. ਸੁਖ ਮੰਗਤ ਦੁਖ ਆਗਲ ਹੋਏ, ਸਗਲ ਵਿਕਾਰੀ ਹਾਰ ਪਰੋਏ. ਏਕ ਬਿਨਾ ਝੂਠੇ ਮੁਕਤ ਨ ਹੋਏ, ਕਰ ਕਰ ਕਰਤਾ ਦੇਖੈ ਸੋਏ. ਤ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨਾ ਅਗਨ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਬੁਝਾਏ, ਦੂਜਾ ਭਰਮ ਸਹਿਜ ਸੁਭਾਏ. ਗੁਰਮਤੀ ਨਾਮ ਹਿਰਦੈ ਵਸਾਏ, ਸਾਚੀ ਬਾਣੀ ਹਰ ਗੁਣ ਗਾਏ. ਤਨ ਮਹਿ ਸਾਚੋ ਗੁਰਮੁਖ ਪਾਓ, ਨਾਮ ਬਿਨਾ ਨਾਹੀ ਨਿਜ ਠਾਓ. ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਪਰਾਇਣ ਪ੍ਰੀਤਮ ਰਾਓ, ਨਦਰ ਕਰੇ ਤਾਂ ਬੂਝੈ ਨਾਓ. ਮਾਇਆ ਮੋਹ ਸਰਬ ਜੰਜਾਲਾ, ਮਨਮੁਖ ਕੁਚੀਲ ਕੁਸ਼ਿਤ ਬਿਕਰਾਲਾ. ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਸੇਵੈ ਝੂਕੈ ਜੰਜਾਲਾ, ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਨਾਮ ਸਦਾ ਸੁਖ ਨਾਲਾ. ਗੁਰਮੁਖ ਬੁਝੈ ਏਕ ਲਿਵਲਾਏ, ਨਿਜ ਘਰ ਵਾਸੈ ਸਾਚ ਸਮਾਏ. ਜੰਮਣ ਮਰਣਾ ਠਾਕ ਰਹਾਏ, ਪੂਰੇ ਗੁਰ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਮਤ ਪਾਏ. ਕਥਨੀ ਕਥੋਂ ਨ ਆਵੈ ਔਰ, ਗੁਰ ਪੂਛ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਨਾਹੀ ਦਰ ਹੋਰ. ਦੁੱਖ ਸੁਖ ਭਾਣੈ ਤਿਸੈ ਰਜਾਏ, ਨਾਨਕ ਨੀਚ ਕਹੈ ਲਿਵਲਾਏ. ਕਥਨੀ ਕਥੋਂ ਨ ਆਵੈ ਔਰ, ਗੁਰ ਪੂਛ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਨਾਹੀ ਦਰ ਹੋਰ. ਦੁੱਖ ਸੁਖ ਭਾਣੈ ਤਿਸੈ ਰਜਾਏ, ਨਾਨਕ ਨੀਚ ਕਹੈ ਲਿਵਲਾਏ. Haumai and thinking that is associated with Haumai is the subject of this passage, this Ashtapadi. What it is, what it leads to, and how we can cure ourselves of it. Because Haumai Karatia Neh Sukh Hoi, acting out of Haumai cannot result in fulfillment. Because egoic thinking, which is manamat, it is impulsive, jhoothi. It is binary. It is constantly caught in the binary of opposites. Whereas fulfillment comes from self-awareness, sacha soi. So the dualistic mind, which is the Haumai mind, is always anxious. Sagal bigute pave doe. Dual. So the Guru says, learn to live in acceptance of what is. So kamave tur likhya hoye. So this dualistic awareness that emerges out of Haumai is really the root problem. It is a deception because it leads us into thinking of ourselves as the subject and the rest of the world as the object. That is the binary perspective that Haumai is caught up in. But as we know from Gurmat, this is a deception, and it is also the source of all our anxiety, because the I is always in a state of fear. It is in a state of fear of losing what is comfortable to it. And this, over time, conditions the Haumai mind to act out of self-preservation. It resists what appears threatening, embraces what is comforting. But when you think about it, we know that Haumai has no real existence. It's just a mental construct. So what is happening here is we are becoming trapped in a conceptual prison of our own making. You see? We associate what threatens us as undesirable. We react. We resist to everything that is presented to us. We have to first sort it out according to our conditioning. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Should I run from this? Should I embrace this? And it causes this cycle of anxiety. And, as we have said, it's a conceptual prison that we are trapped in. And Guru Nanak is showing us a way to break out of this prison and find fulfillment. And the way out is acceptance of the way things are, and that only happens through awareness of the self within. So acceptance implies being neutral to whatever happens, of not engaging Haumai in this binary yes-no behavior. So self-awareness gives us a broader perspective, an understanding of the way things really are. So kabave ture likhya hoy. Understand the natural order of things. Recognition, realization in the mind. That's the way. But the Guru says in the central message that he is surprised. The world is engaged in a gamble. We are all gamblers, he says. Aisa jag dekhya juari. Rash, and maybe even a tad insane. Why? Because it wishes for a different outcome but does not want to change its behavior. That cannot happen. And that is the point of surprise. You have to change behavior. You need self-knowledge. The self, though, is imperceptible. And to speak about it without seeing is of no value. Adisht dise ta kahya jaye, only if you can see it. Bin dekhe kehna birtha jaye. It is of no value unless you can see it. And how do you see it? When the consciousness is attuned, seva surt ek livlaye, through Guru wisdom, then the self is perceived as a presence, and that happens with natural ease. Dise sahaj subhai. So perceive the presence of the self within, and for that one requires the guidance of Guru wisdom. And the Guru then speaks about the condition that we find ourselves in. All of us do. We desire happiness, sukha mangat, but happiness is momentary and always leaves a residue of dissatisfaction. So sukha mangat, dukh agal hoi. It presents itself because it carries the seed of dissatisfaction within it. They're inseparable. Happiness and unhappiness are inseparable, as strewn together like a garland. Sagal vikari har proya. and they keep the egoic mind in a state of constant wavering. So without awareness of oneness, we live in this folly. Ek bina chuthe. And being in that folly, we are incapable of experiencing freedom. Mukt na hoye. Trishna agan sabad bujhaye, duja param sahaj subhaye. The message, Shabad of good wisdom, the messaging of good wisdom, if absorbed, quietens the mind, the hankering of the mind, and the delusion of duality disappears spontaneously as the message is absorbed. Duja param sahaj subhaye. When self-knowledge is enshrined in the heart, Gurmati Naam Hriday Vasaya, and expressed as a virtue. Sachi Bani Har Gun Gaye. We have to understand that the self, which is imperceptible, becomes perceptible through the cultivation of virtue. Virtue or qualities are really the self materialized in material form. And the process for this is good wisdom. That's the catalyst. That's the alchemy that has to happen. So through good wisdom, what happens is you begin to develop love for the self. Tanmay sacho gurmukh pao. Emotion, feeling. Because without self-knowledge and love for self-knowledge, the mind cannot manifest virtue. Naam bina nahi nij thao. So the Guru refers to the self as the beloved king. Pritam Rao. The king is won over by love. Prem Parayan Pritam Rao. And when grace dawns, harmony with the self is achieved. Nadar kare ta bujhe now. And now the Guru touches on the state of the egoic and self-willed mind. He says, the egoic and self-willed mind is indolent, it is devoid of zeal and dreadful. Manamukha kuchil, kushit bikaralla. And it is entangled in the web of Maya's delusion. Maya moho sarab janjala. That is the state that our mind is in. If only it were to follow the guidance of the true enlightener, it can free itself. Satguru say that chuke janjala, that web can be broken out of. Amrit Naam Sada Sukhan Allah. Naam, self-knowledge is the elixir that will give you the eternal bliss and happiness that we are all seeking. So what happens is that under the tutelage of good wisdom, Pure Gurte e mat pai, the mind turns inwards. Gurmukh bujhe ek levelai. It starts to turn inwards and gradually becomes centered in the self. Nij ghar vasa sach samay. And it is this process that releases it from the self-perpetuating delusion of birth and death. Birth and death. Jamman marna thak raha hai. And in conclusion, the Guru says, the lowly Nanak is attuned to the self, but declares, Nanak neech kahe livelai, there is no other door than that of the Gur Enlightener. So Nanak is assuring us that there is only one way out, and that is Gur wisdom. Gur pooch dekhya, nahi darhor, no other door. And what you learn is that happiness and unhappiness are really the writ of the divine. It just is. And we need to attune ourselves to that divine will. Not enough can be said about it. Kathana, katho na aave or. On that note, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.